Hello, welcome to The Revealing. I'm your host, Pavarotti, here to discuss the Idaho 4 case. As a disclaimer, this channel's for entertainment purposes. These are my opinions, not here to slander. Let's get started. Today, I'm going to straight freak you out. I'm going to blow your mind. I'm going to give you the biggest bam you could possibly wish for at this point. And look, I'm not going to give it to you to the end of this video. I want you to do me a favor. Don't skip to the end of the video and cheat. Wait, watch the whole video so you can get its full context, so you can have its full impact when I give you that bam. But I assure you, you need to hang with me on this one. And you know, I've done several videos the last few days, had a little bit of time on my hands. Well, after this one, I'm probably going to take a break for just a little bit. Maybe not too long, but definitely just a little bit, because I've studied myself until I'm absolutely mush-brained. But I think you're going to appreciate it after watching this one. So what I've done is I've read that Washington, affidavit when they were applying for the search warrant to search Mr. Kohberger's apartment there in Washington many times, along with Brett Payne's version. I've never really set them down side by side, though, and completed a real Pavarotti deep dive. Well, for the last hour, I've been doing that. And folks, let me tell you, I can sit here and make this video 3 hours long and show you all the bams I could possibly, think of to show you, because there's a bunch. But I'm not going to do that at this point, okay? But I am going to go through and highlight some areas, and I'm going to point out something that is absolutely going to freak you out. So again, hang with me. And we're going to start this thing. This is the statement of Sergeant Dustin Blaker. Okay, and this affidavit almost mirror images Brett Payne's in some ways, but there's a few differences in it. And we're going to discuss that. So let's go ahead and start breaking this thing down. And as I do this, I want you to start formulating this idea in your mind, okay? Because at the end of this, I would really like for you to post in the comments your honest answer to this question. And that is because we're going to be discussing this knife sheath and his DNA, and that would be the main focal point if somebody was to frame Mr. Kohberger, okay? Because that's the real evidence against him. Not the IGG investigation and all that, but the actual DNA on the knife sheath that has been positively matched to Mr. Kohberger. I mean, if that wasn't just, a pass-through, and you truly believe it was planted, I need you to answer me this question honestly. Why would they frame Mr. Kohberger? And the outsider answer is not sufficient, okay? Because these are two big colleges. None of these kids most of the kids at these colleges are outsiders. They come from all over. So probably 70, 80, maybe even 90% of the young people that attend school at these colleges don't live in those areas. So they come from everywhere. That's how college works. So the outsider not when there's hundreds of thugs on their books, drug sellers, robbers, stealers, assault and battery. I mean, they've got a list of thugs that they could set up on this that would make sense. But we're talking about a pristine PhD student, teacher's aide that likes to go for, stargazing trips in the park and lollipops and gumdrops. I mean, what would make law enforcement want to pin the thing on this guy versus, the most obvious people to pin it on? That's just my question to you, because that's the one thing in all this that I don't get. And as I go through and I do this, it's scarily looking like that this was planted. So I'm asking you. I need to get it in my mind. Why would they plant it on this guy? Okay. All right. So let's go to this affidavit. All right. Dustin Blaker, Sergeant Dustin Blaker, duly appointed. Okay. This goes through all of his qualifications. Says here he's peace officer, approximately 22 years. He attended the academy. His main accolade looks like he attended basic narcotics training, and that trained him in handling high-level cases. And it goes on to say that he assisted in previous homicide investigations. Doesn't say they're high-level cases, though. It says his basic narcotics training is what trained him to deal with high-level cases. So you got to understand this mindset of the law enforcement folks. It's homicides are up here, drugs up here. That's their priority. This is homicides. High-level cases, those drug cases. That's just something you got to get your mind around. That's the way they think. Okay, but it goes on to say on November 13th at approximately 4 p.m., Moscow Police Department, Corporal Brett Payne and I responded to 1122 King Road, Moscow, Idaho, hereafter the King Road residence, to assist with scene security and processing of crime scene associated with the 4 unalivings. So him and Brett Payne both arrive at the exact same time, 4 o'clock. And upon our arrival, so he's saying they both got there at the same time, Idaho State Police forensic team was on scene and was preparing to begin processing the scene. Okay, so the forensic team from Idaho State Police were there. They hadn't processed anything yet. In fact, they probably hadn't even gone into the house because it says they were preparing to begin processing the scene. Not they were about to begin, they were preparing to begin. So they probably hadn't even been in the house at all to start their investigation, okay? Officer Smith, one of the initial responding officers to the incident, advised he would walk me through the scene. So obviously, Officer Smith was one of the initial responding officers. He's going to take them through the scene. That means this guy's been through everything at this point. All right, let's go down just a little bit further. Now, they're going to go in. They're going to talk about the victims on the second main floor of the home. We're going to skip that for now. We're going to start to where they go upstairs to the third bedroom. Okay, I then followed Officer Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence. And when he says I then followed him, if you go look at Brett Payne's affidavit, he'll say the exact same thing. I then followed Smith. I mean, they're both together. These are mirror image statements, except for one key point I'm going to point out here in a second. Okay, so they followed Officer Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence. The third floor consisted of 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom. The bedroom on the west side of the floor was later determined to be one of the victims, hereafter one of the victims' room. I later learned from review of Officer Nunez's body camera, and that's in parentheses, that there was a dog in the room when Moscow police officers initially responded. So that tells you right there, Officer Nunez was the other officer that initially responded. Because it says, they learned that because when they initially responded, Officer Nunez has body cam of it. So we know for a fact now that Smith and Nunez are the responding initial officers. They've both been all through this freaking house. We already knew that. That's not, big news to anybody. Okay, and it talked about the dog. But then, as I entered the bedroom, we're just talking about the bedroom with the 2 victims, I could see 2 females in the single bed in the room. Both the victims were deceased with visible stab wounds. I was later advised by ISP, Idaho State Police, that forensic investigation team, that they located a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to one of the victims' right side. And then it has in parentheses, when viewed from the door. So what he's implying there is if you view it from the door, you'll see the knife sheath on the victim's right side. However, he didn't see that knife sheath. He had to wait for the Idaho State Police investigative team to tell him about it later. Because they were still there just preparing to begin to process, any part of the house. So must have been much later by the time they made it to the third floor. That's when he found out about it much later. Yet, the only difference in the statement between him and Brett Payne is right here. Because in Brett Payne's statement, it says exactly the same things, except where it says I was later advised. His says, I also later noticed a knife sheath laying next to one of the victims on the bed, and it even has in the same parentheses, when viewed from the door. So what he's saying is, even though he put the later in there, is I seen the knife sheath laying on the bed right from the door. That's what he's implying in that statement. So they're both standing there next to each other. One of them sees the knife sheath, one of them doesn't, is basically what you can take from that. It's already an inconsistency in the two statements. And everything else is mirror image. So it's weird why they have that one inconsistency. One learned through Idaho State Police, the other one saw it. But it was later. That word later keeps coming up. I'll tell you here in just a second why. Okay, the sheath was later processed and had K-Bar, USMC, and United States Marine Corps Eagle Globe and anchor insignia stamped on the outside of it. Now, when they say later processed, does that mean touched at all? Put into the little evidence baggie? Is that the processing they're talking about, or are they talking about a more a more detailed processing of it, like to go through and look for the DNA? We don't know because it just says later, and then it's real general. Now, the Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA left on the button snap of the knife sheath. Okay, there's that word again, later. Now see, that's what really frustrates me in this, because I've never been able to figure out exactly, because I don't believe they've ever made it public, when they actually processed that state lab this knife sheath and found the DNA on the button snap. When did they do that? What date? What is this later stuff? Because later could mean, I mean, this is December, what, 13th, 14th at this time, or 13th at this time. So later could be the 14th, later on the 13th, could be the 29th, could be the 19th of December, could be the 30th of December. We don't know because it just says later. Very, very odd wording there. But here's what we do know, is once that state lab did process that knife sheath and take that DNA and they ran it through CODIS, at that point the suspect was locked in. Okay, there's no change in the DNA at that point. Once a profile is generated and entered into CODIS, that system is not going to allow you to alter anything after that point. So the suspect was locked in on the date that happened. If we knew the exact date that happened, then that would help us to determine the likelihood of if that evidence was planted or not. But we don't have that information. But I'll tell you what we do have. We have contradicting statements in this affidavit. Not contradicting with each other, contradicting with themselves. And it all revolves around what I just discussed. And I bet you've never even noticed it. Let's scroll down. I want to give you that BAM that I know you're waiting for. Now I have to scroll way down. All right, that was on page 18. We're going to go all the way down to page 36 of this thing. There's 49 pages. Well, I could go through and really show you some stuff. Oh, and I'm about to, but not all of it. Just one part. Okay, let's go. Good. Yeah, my computer's slow. Why are you so slow, computer? Because you're old like me. It's old like Pavarotti. I guess I'll have to break down and go buy a new computer and at some point get a fancy little camera and one of them little microphones like all these people talk into. I don't want the headset. I can't do because I don't like them. Never liked the headset. Maybe I'll get a fancy microphone. I don't know. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll get this case solved eventually and just put it up. I don't know. Okay, here we go. All right, so just to tell you where we're at in this, we're discussing right here, things that we expect to find when we search that victim's residence, okay? Because it says while they believe Mr. Kohberger is visiting family in Pennsylvania over the current school break at WSU, I believe he intends to return for the start of the next semester, so I expect his belongings to still be in his residence at 1630 Northeast Valley Road, G201, okay? And then we get to this. Are you ready, folks? To date, we have not recovered the weapon used in the unalivings, which would indicate that he took it with him from the scene. Okay, since they haven't recovered it, it would indicate he took it with him from the scene. Well, that's not too hard to ascertain. Now, based on my training, remember they got all that training in, well, drug crimes anyway, that weapon will likely contain trace evidence on it. What kind of trace evidence, Pavarotti? Well, such as blood. Well, blood victims, that'd be strong. Or skin. Oh, skin. That'd be trace evidence. That'd be, what do you call that? Touch DNA. That's what that skin is. Touch DNA. Oh, that's what they found, isn't it? Or hair. Victim's hair. That'd be strong. From the crime scene. One likely location for the weapon would be his residence. Where's the BAM? Pavarotti, where's the BAM? I missed the BAM? Good. Oh, I left out. Okay, 1, 2, 3. I left out 5 words. I'm sorry. Let me read this again. Okay, just bear with me. Okay, to date, we have not recovered the weapon used in the unalivings, which would indicate that he took it with him from the scene. Now, based on my training, that weapon will likely contain trace evidence on it, such as blood or skin or hair from the crime scene. One likely location for the weapon or any sheath for the weapon would be his residence. Okay, so one likely location for the weapon or any sheath for the weapon would be his residence. What the heck? One likely location for the weapon or any sheath for the weapon would be his residence. But now, based on my training and what I've just read, I would think the likely location for the sheath for the weapon would be under one of the victims on the 3rd floor. Ain't that what you said? You didn't see it. The Idaho State Police forensic team told you about it. They found the sheath under the victim there, Blaker. Now, in your buddy Payne, he said he found it under the victim. It must have been simultaneously with the Idaho State Police forensic team, I guess. But what you're saying is that's not the likely location for it where they found it. The likely location for it, for that weapon or any sheath for that weapon, would be in his residence. Okay, so would y'all quit looking at that one you found under the victims, because it's not there. It's not real, according to Mr. Blaker. That's not even, it's nothing. The sheath to that weapon's in his residence more than likely when you get in there and look for it, find it. Hey, they spent all that time pulling that sheath out from underneath the victims, and I don't know how much time they wasted messing with that thing when they could have been over there getting the search warrant to get in that apartment where it probably really is. Is that making any sense to you? Doesn't to me either. So you mean this Nimrod put in his own search warrant affidavit application that he's looking for the dang knife and the sheath in the apartment? That's what they're looking for? That's what they're going to search for? Bam! 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 That's on page 36 of that affidavit, if you're interested in following up and making sure Pavarotti ain't making stuff up. But you know what? If you like the way that I can go through and pick fly shit out of black pepper, then like and subscribe to the channel. Post those comments. Post those criticisms. Keep those criticisms fair, y'all. But look, that last video I just did, now all those comments were way too fair. I couldn't even find a criticism. Maybe one's posted since I've read them, but I couldn't even find one, and that's being way too fair now. I'm just kidding with y'all. I want y'all to post whatever your thoughts are, because I like reading your thoughts. Don't let me dictate what you post. But, I sure appreciate you taking the time out to watch me, just have a good time sitting there making a video as I go through and try to crack this case. But as I mentioned, I may have overdone myself here the last few days because I had a little time on my hands. Mrs. Pavarotti is probably wanting my attention. I imagine she does. So I may take a few days off from this, but again, I sure look forward to hearing from y'all, especially on this one, because as I read that, I almost fell out of my dang chair. But y'all have a great day. Pavarotti is out.